Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, one and all. Welcome to another edition of The Smoking Barrel. I'm Rustin Edwards, based in Geneva, with the world traveling co-host, Mr. Matt Stanley, with
From
his daughter's
sunglasses.
sunglasses.
No, the daughter's doll sunglasses. Like, Dad, can you fix them? You know, the jobs I have these days. The problem is, look how old I'm getting. I'm like, I need my bins. I need my glasses. Hello, everyone. Where are we? 5th of August, 11:18 local time, Gulf Standard Time. I nearly swore then. But what problems you speak of, Edwards? Brent's below 80. Things are back to normal.
Yeah, no, we got peace in the world. There's no problems.
I Yeah, I mean, I nearly swore again, but I didn't. Yeah, look, I don't know where to begin. When did we last record? A couple of weeks ago, right? I was in
Yeah, a
London
couple of
last week.
weeks ago. And what's happened in those last 2 weeks here, we've gone from we are going to destroy Iran to we've stopped the bombings because everybody's talking, and now we have a potential deal of reopening the Straits of Hormuz, which
Yeah,
nobody
but
had seen.
what? Right. Now, I need to be professional because I'm a professional and I need to be professional. This reopening of, let's just recap. So, this time, let's have a look. Yesterday at 1 second, let me just pull it up. Financial Juice. Everyone's enjoying financialjuice.com, by the way. You still on it, Edwards?
Oh yeah,
It's
still use
very good. Right, now let's have a look at this. So, I reckon an announcement we saw yesterday, 1722. An announcement is expected regarding the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, a high-ranking source told Al Arabia. Don't know who that was. And then Scott Bessent was the one yesterday who was quoted as saying, US Treasury Secretary Bessent, we may have an Iran deal tomorrow to open Hormuz. Flat price went from yesterday we were trading at around $86 a barrel when
Yep.
I published like a commentary thing, 86.50, and then we went all the way down to 78.72. Last night or this morning we went down to $78.39. Now, we are currently trading at 79.67 up on the day. This deal to open the Strait of Hormuz, this is what Iran and Oman say. Iran say, yeah, it's going to open, but any ships coming into the Middle East Gulf go the Iranian route. If you're going out, that's the Omani route. Isn't that a toll system that we were speaking about 5 months ago?
Well, and it's a case that the Iranians have control of the northern route, and they say, okay, if you're going to come to the north, you have to schedule that to the Iranian Persian Gulf Straits Authority. If you're going to go to the southern route, you have to schedule that through the Omanian Maritime Authority. However, the Iranian Persian Gulf Straits Authority has oversight over that. And there's some question of these voluntary fees that might be applied as well, which to me, is it truly a voluntary fee or is it a fee that you have to pay if you want to enter anyway? But you're not being forced to pay it, you have to volunteer to pay it. So a lot of
Voluntary.
questions still remain on what the structure looks like, how is it going to work, and will it pass muster with insurance companies to make them comfortable enough to apply coverage for vessels to transit through that routing?
Right.
And
Now,
that to me is the biggest question. So if there is some deal, will the insurance companies say, hey, we're happy with this and we'll give you coverage?
would you like to see how busy the Strait of Hormuz is right now?
Oh, I'm sure the traffic there is immense.
I mean,
Yeah,
I,
it looks like there's been no change since February.
I have nothing to say because when they say a picture says a thousand words, I mean, I am one, I am one walking picture. Apparently, here's the Iranian route. Here's the Omani route. Here's the IMO route. Now, you may go, yeah, but Stan, everyone goes dark when they're crossing the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, fine. So what you're telling me is, okay, I get that. So they turn off their AIS around what here? And switch it on back around here. So they cross the Strait of Hormuz. Now we'll get onto that in a minute. But why does the market so readily believe that what Scott Bessent says, and I'm not knocking the Treasury Secretary? Not at all. Why does the market suddenly go, all right, Scott, fine, we like that, and oil goes back down when there's actually what we're going from is zero to absolute hero within apparently a matter of hours. Can someone explain that to me?
Well, I think this is a case of, the market is probably getting exhausted with all of the conflict of the world. And with that, any shred of hope opens up people's to say, okay, oh, there's a chance that this could actually happen, and thus we move things forward. And to be honest, there's been a lot of, I would say, positive remarks from Iran as well as Oman that they're working on some type of arrangement.
Yeah, but it doesn't. Does it matter about those? Like, I know, with all respect
Well,
to the
to
Omanis.
me, that is more, you need to hear the Iranians say, yes, this is a deal. We have a deal. Everything's good. Because right now you have Trump saying, oh, we're talking to the Iranians. The Iranians saying, we're not talking to anybody in the United States. They're not included in any of these discussions. Yet they seem to be wanting to make the appearance that they are driving the discussions, the U.S.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
what Qatar's Ministry of Foreign Affairs yesterday, after Scott Bessent announced all this, said efforts are underway to resume negotiation between Iran and the United States.
yes.
So I don't know what to believe anymore. And I'm talking about I don't know what to believe around people who are in the administration of the United States of America.
Well, I mean, again, there is no, the fact of the matter is that transits are still negligible. There are some ships going across, but it's a negligible amount. The embargo against Iranian ports is still in action by the U.S. Navy, and no ships are transiting in the Straits of Hormuz. So nothing has changed physically.
Yeah, and just to put that into context, you can see here is our Strait of Hormuz crossings dashboard, right? So you can see where it goes back. So this is like a moving average, pretty steady around 97 ships a day. Right now, we're at 12 ships a day. This is when the ceasefire was really taking hold. We got up to a total of 61, um, which was a lot better. But that was over a month ago. That was 6 weeks ago. We
Yep.
went down to a low last Thursday where there were five ships that crossed the Strait of Hormuz. I don't care whichever way you want to cut this cake. That is still a trickle. And I know I might be saying, yeah, I know, fine. But when the Strait of Hormuz reopens, that will go back up. Yeah, but if my auntie had bollocks, she'd be my uncle, right? That's kind of where we are, right? I'm not being a knob there, but there is no, it's Iranian route, dark route, unknown route. There's no IMO route. And I know we've been banging this drum for a while. But when I am bludgeoned with data that doesn't lie, I cannot work out why the market is so ready to believe headlines and flat prices trading back to where it was around here, maybe. Just me?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the conundrum that we all have, and you take not only the issues with crude oil flat price, but you look at what's happened with distillate cracks. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, prior to the end of July, distillate cracks were at an all-time high. Distillate prices were at extremely high levels, and now that market has collapsed massively over the last couple of weeks, couple of days, excuse me, couple of days.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's still just shy of $150 a barrel front month gas oil.
Yeah, it is, but it's come off from where it was.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I look at what the
Now, part of that is going to be the
gas,
technicalities of the ICE gas oil contract because it's going into expiry here soon.
yeah,
And in reality, with the water levels on the Rhine being as low as they are,
yeah.
the outlet of gas oil to the interior European via barge traffic is very hard to accomplish. The big mark is the Kleb, which is the rock formation. I believe it's north of Basel on the Rhine, which dictates how further you can go on what draft.
Right now, I wanted to ask you about it. So it's just, you're right. And thanks for sort of pulling me away from the quagmire that is the Middle East right now. But talking seasonality, sure. So let's just focus on the Rhine, okay? Because let me just come out of this. Let me just share my screen so you can see. Let me share that. Can you see that? You got me?
Yep.
Right. So, okay, now let's talk about there's Mr. Edwards down here. Hello, say hello, Russ. Hello, Russ. Now, when we're talking about the Rhine, a lot of just break it down for the uninitiated. Why is the Rhine, why is an internal river within Europe so important that it moves diesel prices globally?
Well, you have the refining footprint up in the ARA region, which is Antwerp, Rotterdam,
Yeah,
Amsterdam. And there you
yeah,
have a plethora of refining of processing, which
here,
feeds the majority of Europe. Now,
yeah,
if you look there at the port of Rotterdam as an example, there's a lot of rivers because it is a river delta,
yeah.
and the river delta is of the Rhine. And so as the Rhine goes into the North Sea, it basically passes through the industrial heartland of Germany, parts of France, and into Switzerland. And from there, you use that as a supply chain to move product from the refining footprint up there in Rotterdam and ARA all the way
This is the
down
Rhine.
into the markets.
This is the Rhine, right? That I'm here. So here's the sea, then through here, and then we go bum 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 bum, and then this is the Rhine, isn't it? Through Dusseldorf, Leverkusen, Cologne, Bonn. That's the Rhine. Am I right?
So
Am I
that's
right?
the,
Am I
yep. And then
wrong?
you keep going down. It goes down to the border of France because then it creates the border between France and Germany.
So there's down here through
Strasbourg. Yep.
Strasbourg.
And then right there at Basel, it creates the northern border of Switzerland and Germany.
Okay. So this waterway is one of the most well, yeah, okay. It's one of the lifebloods of continental Europe, and you're talking about deeply entrenched here. I didn't know that it hugged the border like that. So hang on, the border with Germany and France follows the Rhine.
Yes.
Shut my mouth. And where does it end up?
Well, it ends up at basically south of Kur, which is in the middle of Switzerland.
Oh,
So if
look,
you see, the Rhine feeds into Lake Constance, and then from
uh,
Lake Constance it goes south through Liechtenstein, and then into. Oh, you're going in the wrong direction there, Mr. Stanley.
sorry,
There you go,
sorry.
Lake Constance, right there, Lake Constance,
There it is. Okay.
and then from there
Yes.
it feeds south, and you see Chur down there. That's kind of near the headwaters of the Rhine River.
Well, do you know what? I mean, I talk a lot of crap, of course I do, but I did not know that my co-host was such a bloody geographical genius. Did you? Okay, so going back up here, along here, bum, 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 up here, Strasbourg. Okay, that's the Rhine. That's through Rotterdam. So it flows in or out.
It flows out into the North Sea. So basically, you
Right.
take water melt from the high plateaus around Chur, which feed into the Rhine and goes forward. Now, during this time of year, we've had limited rainfall, although that's starting to pick up here recently. So that will eventually feed into the Rhine and cause water levels to go up slightly. But nevertheless, without the high rain in the Swiss plateau, there's very little water to feed the Rhine and keep the water levels up high enough.
And that means that barges can't go into the Rhine and supply those
So
continental.
supply the intra-regional supply network into Germany, Austria, as well as Switzerland.
Okay, and then what does that do to local? Is that gasoline and diesel, or mainly
Gasoline and
diesel?
diesel, yes.
And that causes prices to go up locally, or does it actually cause
Well, so
problems?
so you end up with a supply squeeze on the inter-region of Germany, Switzerland, Austria, because you don't have the supply to come in to feed the market as much because the barges can make it through, but they have to be light loaded. And I think at this point they're loading 50% or something like that. So just on that alone, the freight, because the freight of moving a barge is the same no matter how much. And if you have more barrels on the barge, that overall the cost of per barrel is lower. So if you're
Right,
loading 50% to cross over the Kleb, then your cost per barrel is higher for that barrel that's being delivered past the Kleb.
gotcha.
So
Because you're
that
paying the
causes
same amount of freight for less material.
Yes. And so that causes your prices to go up. What it also does, it starts to back up product in the ARA region because you don't have the outlet down the river that you would normally have.
I see. So is it a net then?
Net net in
Well, I mean, if material for Northwest Europe gas oil prices, there's demand there, but it can't move. So there's an excess of material. So yeah, there might be, but you can't physically get the material there. So prices can't stay higher for longer
Right. They
because of
have to actually
tank
come
top.
off in the pricing hub of ARA versus the retail markets down in the Swiss plateau, southern Germany, Austria, where they might
Okay.
actually have an elevated price because they don't have the supply coming in.
And who are the main players on that? Is it your usual BP,
Yeah, your
Shell?
usual majors plus some of the other minor distributors as well.
Okay, interesting. So just bring that back. Okay, that's continental Europe, but it all adds to the gas oil story, doesn't it?
It does because not only that, you have a bit of a spec grade differential between what you can produce in Europe versus some of the places in the rest of the world. So you limit your ability to export barrels out of ARA to other marketplaces. Um,
Right.
and with the way the market has been for the last few months, you have lower flash diesel in Europe versus diesel flash from other locations in the world because they have that leeway on the specification for the local markets.
Right. And
So you,
and so if you're looking at that market, then you're looking at how much the Rhine is affecting. You need to be a weatherman most of the time this time of year.
well, you have to be able to, you have to watch the weather. Just like every other trader who looks at arbitrage, you have to look at the Atlantic Basin, the Atlantic
Yeah, of
Ocean for hurricanes this time of year.
course.
Or if you're in the Indian Ocean, looking at the tropical storms in the Indian Ocean as well. I mean, so there's things you have to look at this time of year because it's summer, and this is when all the weather events usually impact oil markets hit the market.
I'm running out of eyeballs though, because there's so much going on that I've got one eye on Jebel Ali, what happened there overnight, and was reading these rumors and all this kind of stuff. One eye on the Houthis because apparently they've just attacked a Saudi vessel with missiles, and they're going to target ships north of the Red Sea. That's just come in. Brent's just gone above 80, and then I've got to keep one eye on the bloody water levels in the Rhine. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, pretty much.
It is one of those
Well,
markets, isn't it? And
well,
it's one of
it's
those
not,
markets,
and the Rhine is one river. The Danube is the other river, major
right?
trade network, which is also showing low water levels. And the one of the other issues that this starts to impact other markets outside of just petroleum supply and demand, because you've got the power plants in Hungary, the nuclear power plants can't get enough feed to keep the reactors cool, so they start shutting in nuclear power plants, which then causes a demand pull on other energy sources to supply electricity to those regions. You also have impact to steel production and other types of metallurgy because, again, you don't have the cooling water available to cool your furnaces. Therefore, you start cutting in production of all that as well. So there's a lot of other knock-on effects that happen because of this. You also have grain that can't get out to market because it starts getting bottlenecked because you don't have enough water to move grain out.
Right.
So there's a lot of other things that happen to a lot of other commodities because the water levels on these rivers are at very extremely low levels.
Okay. Okay. Forget all that though, just for a moment. Saudi Aramco made $33 billion in Q2.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple of things I want to talk. I actually interviewed Amina, my colleague at Backer this morning when I was hosting the old radio show here. There's something in the Saudi Aramco figures that really intrigues me, which is called hang on, just let me bring up one sec. Talk amongst yourselves. Bring up though.
Say the Dubai Eye has been doing very well with the smoky barrel this week.
Yeah, you were on there the other day, wasn't it? Now, there's something that's called the averaged realized crude oil price that Aramco put in their numbers. Now, do you know what that is? I do. I'm asking you.
So the average realized crude oil price is probably the actual price they've received for what they've sold when you take in consideration the benchmark that's used to price the oil plus the OSP value.
Correct. Absolutely spot on. Now, here's the important thing. The average realized crude oil price, as Edward so eloquently says, is what Aramco on a net basis are getting for all their grades of crude that they sell. Right? That averaged $108.10 a barrel in Q2. Do you care to hazard a guess on a percentage basis, how much that was up compared to Q2 last year?
Oh, I would say at least 20%.
66%.
Ah, okay.
So the average, or 62%. So I'll give you the two at the end. Q2 25, average realized crude oil price for Saudi Aramco was $66.70. Q2 2026 was $108.10 a barrel. Right? Now, here we are in this environment where when you look at the number of barrels that Aramco are selling, the volume of barrels is probably 50% down, but they're getting 62% more for their crude. That means they're still making $33 billion. That means dividends still work. I'll tell you what's incredible is people's understanding, and I was one, that the Middle East would struggle during Q2, Q3 because of the conflict. Everyone's making money. Everyone's making money because there is an amazing element of resilience within the Middle East. Of course, that's an adjective we have to use, but people are surprised with how resilient the whole economy has been. Aramco is no, is arguably the sort of bellwether for that. They produced 9.4 million barrels a day in Q2 as opposed to 12.8. Cash flow is down, but they're still making money. So it's an amazing set of results. And ADNOC Distribution, the big retail arm, they had a record quarter as well. I do worry about Q3 though. I do worry about the second half of the year. I don't believe. I do believe, but I just can't imagine it will be the same story going forward.
Well, I mean, the difference you have in Q3 right now is that if Saudi has to add an extra 25 days of transit to move a cargo of crude oil from the Red Sea to Asia, because they're going around Africa through the Suez Canal, that's going to impact the premium they can charge on the barrel because, okay, that's an extra 25 days that the receiver won't have that molecule inside their plant to
Right.
monetize against the crack.
Now, this is something else. Now, I should know this, but I'm going to ask you because you're the expert, right? So I'm just going to bring up the map again. Now, the vast majority of crude that Saudi are exporting now is coming through Yanbu, which is here. That's fed from the East-West pipeline, which is fed from here to there, right? So the vast majority of crude, instead of going via the Strait of Hormuz, is now going from Yanbu through the Red Sea and is then going east. You've got the Bab-el Mandeb issue with the Houthis down here, right? The vast majority of cargoes that are loaded out of Yanbu are VLCCs. Now, you can't get a VLCC through the Suez Canal. So just break it down again for the uninitiated. If you have a VLCC that loads 2 million barrels of crude in Yanbu, but you want to put us, but you want to go through here, but you can't. How do you do it?
So there is a another pipeline that exists. It's called the Suez Med pipeline, which starts at Ain Sukna in Egypt,
Which
which is
is
a
here, right?
port just to the east of or to the west of the entrance to the Suez Canal. It's actually a little bit further south, I think.
It's Suez.
Yeah. So that Ain
Yeah.
Sukna, I think, is a little bit south, but nevertheless. So from that Ain Sukna
There.
position, there is
Yeah.
the Suez Med pipeline, which then pumps oil up through to the to the west of Alexandria.
Right. Sorry. So,
So what you would do is that, and some ships have done this, which is not very efficient. And I'm sure the Saudis have re-engineered their methodology. Is you basically are going to shuttle crude between Yanbu and Ain Sukna,
okay.
and then you'll have ships on the other side of the Suez Med pipeline who will load cargoes and head east.
Right. Okay. So here's
So
Yanbu.
you'll end up with a shuttle run between the two places, and then you'll have other ships on the other side. Now, if you're a Suezmax, I believe with the new channel depth, a loaded Suezmax can go through the canal, I believe,
Okay.
because they did increase the draft a couple of years ago to allow for that.
Right. So, sorry. Right. Okay. So here's Yanbu. 1 minute. There's Yanbu. So East-West pipeline, loads of crude. You get a cargo, loads up here. You sail up the Red Sea, to Sukna. You discharge here, and then a pipeline carries that same material all the way north to
Just all right, that cluster of ships right about
here,
there. Yep. City
City
Korea.
Korea. Right. Okay. So the pipeline goes across here, and then you load here, and then okay, okay. And can you get a VLCC in here?
Yes.
So you can get a VLCC in here. So you just aggregate volume from the Sumed pipeline that's fed from Ain Sukna here across to there, and then you go on your way. Now, how long roughly does that process take?
So you're talking, I think the transit from Yanbu up to Ain Sukna, I want to say off the top of my head, is about 2.5 days.
Right,
And then pumping across, that can be, I believe, another 2 days to get the molecule across physically,
right.
and then loading, another day and a half on
So it's
top.
an okay. So it's a week for loading, right? Say to get out into the Med, and then to get from the Med round here through. So from
If you're
East
going to
Med here,
Asia from that point, it's about 20 days
round the Cape of Good Hope is
extra.
around 20 days.
20 days extra from what you would normally. So that trip would be roughly 45 to 50 days from City Career all the way to say just north of Singapore.
Okay,
Where if you're loading directly from Yanbu, that trip's about 20.
okay. I mean, yeah. So that's really interesting. I had no idea, and I think that vast. I mean, I'm not saying that our listeners and viewers are naive to this, but I mean, it's amazing to put some numbers around it all, like how long it takes. And I don't think people really get that. It's one of those ones like if you know, you know, but if you don't, then it's like I don't want to even want to ask. So is here's the thing, you know, conscious of time. Here's the thing: is that the new world order? Is that a permanent solution, or do you think that's only in place temporarily while Bab-el-Mandeb and Strait of Hormuz are closed?
Well, as Bab-el Mandeb is closed only for, as the Houthis say, for Saudi vessels or Saudi aligned vessels. Chinese vessels or Chinese owned vessels seem to have no problem going through the Straits of Bab el Mandeb. Russian vessels seem to have no problem going through Bab el Mandeb. So, they are being very picky about who they're attacking there. So, is it a full closure? No. Just like Hormuz is not a full closure, certain countries have a pass to get through because they made an arrangement with the Iranians. So, for non approved vessels, yeah, I think that's a new route that gets kept in place, and you rejigger the supply chain again. Now,
We're gonna
theoretically, what should happen is because now you're competing with supply on a timeline basis from the Gulf of Mexico. And if you are looking at how balances should shift, I mean, it should basically push more Saudi crude into the European refining sector, which would free up more of the South American and Gulf Coast crudes to go east to Asia on a far more efficient run.
okay. I mean, yeah. The danger is when you price in a cargo as a buyer in China or anywhere in Asia, how do you ever know you're buying the right barrel?
Well, your LP has told you that you're buying the right barrel if you're a
Yeah, I know
refiner.
from a slate point of view to run that through a refinery, but if because of geopolitical issues it's not going to be there for another month because you didn't
Right.
anticipate a certain route closing, how do you know surely you would never buy FOB, you'd only buy delivered.
Well, I mean, that's one of the strategies you can take as a refiner, is that you buy some barrels delivered, some FOB, and on the hopes that you control shipping in some regards. Third parties, feather in those other barrels as they show up, and you make sure you have enough flex in your LP model to ensure that when that third party barrel shows up on a delivered basis, you can still run it and you don't really impact your yield profile too much.
And what would your strategy be as a refiner right now, sitting in
Oh,
Chiba in Japan?
if I was sitting in the Far East, I'd be I would have a base load that I'd be buying. I'd be from an FOB basis, and then the balance I'd be buying delivered. And how big is that base load? Is it 30%? Is it 40%? Is it
Mm.
35? I mean, that's the question that every refinery has already answered for themselves, and that's why they buy how they buy.
Okay. And last one before we close up. If you were to put odds on it, what do you think about what Scott Bessent said around the Strait opening today? Reopening today.
Oh, I highly doubtful. I mean, I would say maybe 10% chance it does.
And when it doesn't, if it doesn't, sorry, does flat price rally back up to the 102 we saw when people were really worried about escalation?
I don't think it does yet because you need to have something to push it up there. So, and the problem with all the different parties that are involved in the Middle East conflicts right now, you've got the Strait of Hormuz, you got Bab-el Mandeb. So if it seems like everything's peachy keen with the Strait of Hormuz, but the Houthis clamp down on Bab-el Mandeb, well, are we still in the same position we were before?
Yeah, and
And
do you know the saddest thing as well is that we haven't even started to discuss the what is a quite a grave escalation between Russia and Ukraine.
well, I mean, the Ukrainians have been for the last 40 days. I mean, Ukraine announced 40 days ago that they are going to put it to the Russian economy, and they have accomplished that in 40 days. Now, what happens at this point going forward, who knows? But, 40% of the Russian refining capacity offline, refinery runs down. Russia no longer exporting or minimal exports of diesel, no exports of
Mm.
gasoline, which is impacting the global market because that is a major point of supply. And nobody can run the crude.
Next week, do you reckon we can have one where we only talk about good news?
Good news.
Chances?
Let me think. What good news is?
Well, I'll tell you what the good news is. The opportunity for everyone that we love to see us during APEC at Harry's Bar on Boat Quay.
Oh, that is true. APEC is coming up. We're 1 month away from APEC,
We are. We are.
surprisingly enough.
And do you know, just breaking news, well, not breaking news, IP week next year, or IE week, is now at the end of March.
Yes, it's the week of Easter.
Brilliant.
So
So,
Good Friday is that Friday of that. I think it's the 23rd of March, and Good Friday is that Friday.
so what they've done is they've moved it brilliantly to the end of March when the spring is upon London, it's warmer, but no one will be around because it's Easter week and your wife's going to tell you where you're going to go on holiday.
Well, Easter holidays won't start until that Friday, so people should be there.
Yeah. Anyway, good to see you.
Good to see you all as well. Click like, comment, and subscribe. Catch us on
Yes,
Spotify, YouTube, here on LinkedIn as well. And for those of you who are available in APEC, we look forward to seeing you in Singapore.
we
Boat
do.
Key at
Yes.
Stan's Bar and Grill, otherwise known as Harry's.
Ciao.